And we're live, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Clerk. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our regular council meeting. We'll call this meeting to order, and I will turn to our clerk for a rise and report from our closed session, and then we'll go to Councillor DeLeo for a land acknowledgement. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council entered closed session on November 30th, 2023 at 9 a.m. to discuss the following matter. Wasaga Beach investigation briefing pursuant to Section 239(2)(f) of the Municipal Act, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. As a result of that discussion, the following motions are before Council for consideration. That the CAO be directed and authorized to release certain details of closed meeting discussions pertaining to the business park agreement, beachfront development project, record destruction, and the TPAL land acquisition. And further, that Council be authorized at the November 30th, 2023 JCAC meeting to discuss certain details of closed meeting discussions pertaining to the business park agreement, beachfront development project, record destruction, and TPAL land acquisition.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk, and we'll now look to Councillor DeLeo for a land acknowledgement. Councillor,
if I could get a mover and a seconder, Your Worship.
I'm sorry?
A mover and a seconder.
Oh, my apologies. Mover and a seconder for this, please. Moved by Councillor Belanger, seconded by Councillor Eagle. All in favour? That motion carries unanimously. And we'll now go to Councillor DeLeo for a land acknowledgement. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, everyone. We begin our meeting by recognizing the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples of Canada as traditional stewards and caretakers of the land. We acknowledge that the town of Wasaga Beach is located within the boundaries of Treaty 18, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Tionantadi, and Wendat, and is the home of many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples as part of an intricate nationhood that reaches across Turtle Island. At this time of truth and reconciliation, we welcome the opportunity to work together towards new understandings and new relationships and ask for guidance in all we do.
May I wish, Councillor, and thank you. Now moving on to item number 2, the agenda, disclosure of pecuniary interest. I have none before me at this time. If at some point throughout the meeting a member of council feels they have a pecuniary interest, please let us know. On the item number 3, presentations, 3.1, the Wasaga Beach investigation briefing. And I'll now pass the floor to our CAO, Andrew McNeil. Andrew?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And could I get the clicker right there? Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. Before I start, I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm joined by Mr. John Mascarin, who has acted as external legal counsel in this matter for the municipality. I usually do not prepare speaking notes, but I did today, so forgive me while I will read some of my prepared notes. I thought this matter was serious enough that I wanted to make sure that I covered this accurately. Mr. Mayor, members of council, well, I did not work for the town of Wasaga Beach between the years of 2018 and 2022. I am aware that there were widespread rumors within the municipality at that time pertaining to potential wrongdoing within Town Hall. At the time, given the politically charged nature of the town, I wasn't sure how much credibility to afford what I was hearing. Upon returning to the town as CAO, I wanted to be extremely cautious in how town staff responded to any and all of these rumors. My message to staff was quite simple. Our priority is to move this town forward and to implement council priorities. Our preference was not to spend the next 4 years looking through the rearview mirror, chasing rumors and speculation. That said, I did ask staff to bring to my attention anything that they felt was of a suspicious nature or questionable nature. It did not take long for a multitude of things to arrive on my desk. And the presentation before you today outlines a few of those matters that have been uncovered that are, in my opinion, of a highly questionable nature. The matters that I will provide an update on pertain to 4 issues. The first is the business park transaction that occurred in 2022, the ongoing efforts to redevelop the beachfront with a specific focus between 2018 and 2022, the purchase of the land that our current arena library is nearing completion upon that occurred in 2019, and destruction of records between 2018 to 2022. For those who are not familiar with the background as it pertains to the business park transaction, I wanted to provide some high-level key points just so the community can get a sense of what was involved in this deal. Key components of the deal included turning over town-owned lands in the business park to Zancor in exchange for servicing the lands. The deal was predicated on the delivery of a business park with employment uses only, and that's a very important point to stress. It was intended for employment, not for other uses. The land was kept in trust for Zancor until 2022, when it was conveyed to Zancor just a few weeks before the election. And the business park was exempted from all development charges in perpetuity. The business park transaction is troubling on many levels. To begin, I'd like to qualify the fact that these lands are not located within a community improvement area, or commonly referred to as a CIP. That's a technical planning term that a lot of folks are probably not familiar with. For those who are not familiar with what a CIP is, it's a planning tool that affords municipalities the opportunity to use incentives to spur on economic development activity that might not occur but for incentives being offered. Before I speak in detail about some of the financial implications of this transaction on the town, I'd like to invite Mr. Muscarin to speak to two matters. And the first pertains to issue of bonusing, and the second pertains to the issue of development charge exemptions as they pertain to the business park. Where do you, John?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Andrew, thank you. For those of residents here and watching, the question of bonusing is something that's covered in the Municipal Act. It's a long-standing provision. It's currently in Section 106 of the Municipal Act, and it effectively provides this. A municipality can't sell land at less than fair market value to any commercial enterprise and other entities, and a municipality cannot provide a waiver or exemption in whole or in part against any charge, levy, or rate. It's a rule that's put in place in the Municipal Act to ensure that municipalities don't battle each other, essentially, to give undue incentives to incentivize commercial enterprises to come to their municipality. It's a long-standing rule, as I've mentioned, and so that, in a sense, is what bonusing is. It's a primary rule for municipalities. There are a number of exceptions, and Mr. McNeil has spoken to the first one. One of the exceptions to the rule against bonusing, where you can't do those enhancements, incentives, is in a community improvement plan, which is permitted under Section 28 of the Planning Act. As is indicated on the slide, we were asked to look at the transaction, the whole transaction, dealing with the business park matter, and it is our legal opinion that there may have been some illegal bonusing that had occurred when the lands were transferred in 2022 for the consideration at which was listed on the transfer, given what the deal was in 2006. And it's our legal opinion, again, that was provided to council enclosed, that the exemption that is currently in the development charge bylaw appears to be unlawful. It's not something that's permitted in the Development Charges Act, in our view. That, in a sense, talks to bullets 2 and 3, Mr. McNeil, that I think you wanted me to speak about, and you'll see that there's some other points up there. there, which is what led us to our conclusions. The construction of the services were valued at $1.4 million, and those were listed in the transfer as the consideration. And yet there was an appraisal of land in February of 2022, which listed the land or appraised the value, valuated it at $8.2 million. There was an updated appraisal that was done in November of 2023, which looked at the mixed-use development of the land, which is perhaps what's being proposed now, at $21.7 million. And again, the consideration that was listed on the transfer was only $1.4 million. So I'll turn it back to you, Mr. McNeil.
Thank you so much, John. And I'm going to go over these numbers just one more time, because these are important for the community to understand. So prior to the conveyance of the lands to Zancor in August of 2022, staff worked to prepare a detailed estimate of the value of the services that were installed by Zancor. In 2006, the value was estimated at $1.4 million. Staff then put a 2022 value on that work of approximately $1.8 million. To inform the transaction, an appraisal of the lands was completed in February of 2022 by HG appraisers. The assumption applied that informed that appraisal was that the lands would be used for employment uses only, so no residential was permitted. The value of the lands was estimated at $8.2 million at that time. My next slide will explain this point in greater detail. However, in the summer of 2023, I reached out to HG appraisers and asked if they could prepare an additional appraisal for the lands based on the plan that was submitted by Zancor, which I will describe momentarily. That plan factored in mixed-use development and standalone residential. At HG's suggestion, I agreed that the second appraisal should be reflective of market conditions that were present at the time of the first appraisal, so that we are comparing apples to apples. The second appraisal produced a valuation of approximately $21.7 million. With respect to development charges, I asked the treasurer to estimate what the value of the foregone development charges were to the municipality based on the plans that were submitted to the town by Zancor. That value is estimated at approximately $7.6 million. It's important to note that with tens of millions of dollars at stake, the town got absolutely nothing for an extremely valuable piece of land. Following conveyance of the property, the town did not receive any money. A really important date to understand is December 22nd, 2020. This is the date that Zancor submitted their plans for the business park to the planning department. They were requesting consideration for rezoning and official plan amendments to pursue a mixed-use development that included residential. The entire deal with Zancor was predicated on the development of employment uses within a business park. I'd now like to ask John Muscarin to comment on the impact of the submission of a mixed-use development and how that impacted the 2006 agreement, in his opinion.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, as Mr. McNeil has indicated, the essential term, and it's been actually stated that way several times, the essential fundamental term, the root covenant in the 2006 agreement between the town and Zancor was that there would be a development of a business park. My submission to you is the applications that were made in December of 2020 that seek to have the lands rezoned and redesignated under the official plan for residential, basically erodes or eradicates the fundamental basis of the entire deal of the business park. So it is very concerning, I think, for the municipality. One of the terms in the deal was that the lands would be held by the municipality and then transferred, and that actually occurred. And it appeared to have occurred with the knowledge of some of the staff at the time that there was planning applications that would fundamentally change that business deal on which the transfer was stated to have been based on. That is very problematic in my view, and I think Mr. McNeil said it really well. Really highly questionable actions occurred.
Thank you, John. It was well known by the CAO and broader staff that Zancor had intentions to build residential. They did not make this a secret. They submitted the plans to the planning department in 2020. We've also uncovered, dating back to 2011, signs were erected on the business park lands by Zancor indicating houses coming soon. The CAO at the time quickly advised Zancor that they needed to remove those signs. So dating back over a decade, the intention to build non-employment uses was well known by staff within this corporation and the CAO. Senior staff saw what was going on and advised the CAO prior to the conveyance that he should shift course. They believed that this should have triggered a renegotiation of the deal. Sitting here today, I believe that should have triggered a renegotiation of the deal. Their advice was ignored, and it appears that the CAO misled council on the implications of this transaction and that the public trust may have been violated. The implication of this for the taxpayer of Wasaga Beach is a loss of between $16 million and $30 million. The second matter I wanted to raise is beachfront redevelopment. Unlike the business park, the beachfront does have a community improvement plan in place. This was put in place when I previously worked for the municipality back between 2014 and 2018. This does provide the municipality with more latitude to be able to negotiate deals. There are a couple of matters that are concerning with what went on during 2018 to 2022. The first concerning issue is the path that was taken to bring Zancor to the table. An RFP was issued that clearly stated that the lead development partner can only partner with a minority development partner. Baylock, also known as Baycliff Homes, was the successful proponent of that RFP process. However, this situation was manipulated to bring in Zancor. Zancor showed no interest in developing the beachfront prior to this. They did not even submit a response to the RFP, yet they ended up as the controlling interest partner in Wasaga Baylock Limited. This controlling interest was 75% control. I find this detail extremely concerning. Further, 2 appraisals were prepared for the beachfront. The first was dramatically higher than the second. It was in the hands of the mayor and CAO at the time. However, it was never shared with council, despite repeated questions from a member of council who is still with us today about the land being undervalued through the transaction. A CIP does allow land to be sold under market value. However, the issue at play is that information was deliberately withheld from council that had a direct impact on undermining the town's position in these negotiations. The mayor, CAO, and all officers of the corporation have a fiduciary duty to the town, not to Zancor, and this information should have been shared with council. The third issue that I wanted to raise relates to the land purchased for the town's Twin Pad Arena and library. Two details are intriguing here. The first, despite the fact that council intended to consider the various potential sites to purchase for the TPAL on March 7th of 2019, the CAO brought forward a report on March 5th, 2019, 2 days before council would be considering this matter, recommending the sale of the Chamber of Commerce building to the owner of the adjacent lands that were ultimately purchased for the TPAL. If you're not familiar with the Chamber of Commerce building, the site where you can see on the bottom left where the current arena and library is situated, it's the bottom left corner, which used to be the town-owned Chamber of Commerce building. I find it incomprehensible as to why the CAO, after sitting on the chamber lands for years, felt it necessary to advance this transaction 2 days before shortlisting the sites for the TPAL. Knowing full well that the former Waterworld site, the site that was inevitably purchased, was likely the front runner. I believe the prudent thing to do would have been to pause any disposition discussions on the chamber site until after council had selected a site for the TPAL, and then determine if the chamber building was required. Had council proceeded with the sale, the town would have been placed in a position of having to buy back a site that had just sold within a matter of days of closing the first transaction. Thankfully, council said no to this proposal from the CAO. The second interesting aspect is that the town paid approximately $2 million more than the appraised value for this site. There's a pattern here of selling land below market value when the town owns it, or in fact gifting lands, which was the case with the business park, while paying more than market value when purchasing lands. The net impact is that the taxpayer lost tens of millions of dollars at a time when we're struggling to absorb a $60 million expenditure for a new arena. One of the more serious issues that I wanted to share with council today and the public is the issue of records destruction. For everyone's benefit, both the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection and Privacy Act, also known as MFIPA, and the Criminal Code speak to records retention. Both consider intentional records destruction outside of any policies and procedures to be an offense. While it is certainly possible that there may exist a more egregious example of records destruction in the province, the fact is that we are unaware of one. The scale of records destruction that has taken place within the town of Wasaga Beach appears to be unparalleled. The destruction that has taken place in Wasaga Beach has spanned multiple years and has included hundreds of thousands of records, both digital and hard copy. In 2018, Interim CEO Jerry Marshall began to notice that emails and subfolders were being deleted from his email account. Upon questioning the Chief Information Technology Officer, he was advised that the former CAO had been granted access to the account, and it was he that was deleting records. The former CAO's access was immediately revoked. In 2023, shortly after assuming the role as CAO, I was informed that the former CAO had been covertly working at the fire hall in 2018, destroying records following the appointment of Jerry Marshall as interim CAO. As a thank you to staff for keeping his activities quiet, the former CAO provided staff, who became aware of his presence, with gift cards. We have one of the gift cards that was provided to a staff member. Shortly after the 2022 election, Mayor-elect Smith received numerous calls from town staff advising him that the CAO was leading a massive records destruction campaign. Mayor-elect Smith reached out to the CAO requesting that all records be maintained. After not receiving a response, he followed up with a similar request to the Chief Information Technology Officer and the clerk. Both responded advising that records would be preserved. What followed was absolutely egregious. Under the direction of the CAO, the Chief Information Technology Officer made an urgent request to CompuSolve, the company that maintained the town's email backup server, to wipe the server. CompuSolve responded by questioning the direction, and we have emails that show they were saying, are you sure you want to do this? The response was, yes, ASAP. In a direct conversation that I had with the Chief Information Technology Officer in the summer of 2023, he indicated that the CAO had also been trained on how to permanently destroy records and that he was actively carrying this out. Further, staff have since come forward to share that they witnessed the CAO training other senior staff on how to permanently destroy records. Shortly after the 2022 election, and upon learning of some of the above, interim CAO Marshall commissioned a forensic audit to try and recover records. Some electronic records were able to be restored, but a significant volume have been lost. This includes all council emails from 2018 to 2022, save and except for Councillor Belanger, who I believe still has access to his emails from that time period. Everyone else has had their records wiped. This is a significant issue for the municipality. It is unfortunately common for municipalities to end up in litigation, which helps Mr. Muscarin keep in business, from time to time on various matters. We simply do not know how extensive destruction of records has compromised the municipality, and should the town's position in litigation be compromised because records were destroyed, it may leave those individuals who carried out the destruction open to personal liability. Additionally, it may be difficult, if not impossible, to respond to future FOI requests, Freedom of Information requests, if the records have been destroyed. We will need to seek guidance from the Attorney General to understand the precarious position that this has put the municipality in. While we do not yet have a full understanding of the extent of the destruction, as it has taken place over many years, we do know is that there was a frantic push to destroy records after the 2022 election. This leads one to question, what were the officers of the corporation, and more specifically, the CAO, trying to hide? Combined with some highly questionable real estate transactions, I find this incredibly troubling and questionable conduct. Shortly after being made aware of the magnitude of what the town was facing, I reached out to John Muscarin to seek legal advice. That advice was that I had a fiduciary duty to disclose what had been uncovered to both council and the Ontario Provincial Police. That disclosure took place earlier in the summer of 2023. As CAO, I have engaged in multiple conversations with the OPP and have shared what we have managed to uncover to date. This matter has been turned over to the OPP for their review, and they will determine if any further action will be taken. In addition, the town has and will continue to enhance our records retention policy to try and prevent this abuse from ever happening and again. I wanted to pause just quickly to allow our clerk to speak to this and some of the measures that we're going to be taking to try and prevent this from happening. Over to you, Nicole.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. The Clerk's Department has created a project scope for records that includes enhancing all our policies, looking at current agreements with service providers. We'll be looking to ensure that emails are retained for a 5-year period moving forward as well. We are establishing training for all staff on records, on NFIPA, routine disclosure within the organization. As well, in the 2024 proposed budget, we have secured funding to purchase an electronic records management system as well. So these are the steps that we're taking. We've provided council last meeting with a routine disclosure policy and you will see more policies and agreements come before you in the near future.
Thank you, Nicole. And when that policy comes forward, it will be my strong recommendation that no staff, including the CAO, should ever have the ability to go in and destroy records. That should just be a non-starter. Further, the town has created a whistleblower program to protect anyone who wishes to come forward and report what they believe, if they believe something wrong has happened. While the OPP will investigate any criminal issues pertaining to the above briefing, it is the Attorney General that is responsible for enforcing MFIPA legislation. Therefore, my recommendation is that Council give consideration to passing a motion requesting that in addition to the OPP, that the Attorney General investigate the records destruction issue and pursue charges as appropriate. In conclusion, I am of the opinion that the matters shared with Council today that took place between 2018 to 2022 are of a highly questionable nature. I have no way to know if this is the extent of the questionable behavior. All we know is that the CAO and a small team around him were working very hard to hide something. Given that the town does not have line of sight on any personal financial implications that may have resulted, we have requested assistance from the OPP to investigate those aspects. And with that, I'll happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Andrew and John. Questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Belanger?
Yes, thank you, through the mayor. I didn't know into what detail you were going to enter into three of the items that were discussed this morning. And possibly it would maybe be a later date that we delve into some of them, but I would like to make the public aware of one situation, and that's why I requested a motion that we can speak to in-camera items on these four instances. Related to the contract of the Beachfront, Council was only allowed to view that document in hard copy. We had to come into Town Hall under the supervision of the clerk and review a very technical 54-page document. And we weren't allowed, we were told we weren't allowed to take notes or photos or anything. When I arrived, I said to the clerk, because I'm going to take notes, but I will leave the notes with you, and I would like to have my notes back when we arrive in council to discuss this contract. I did that. When we arrived in council, it was decided they wouldn't return my notes to me, although obviously there had been no chance of confidentiality breach because the notes were in the hands of the clerk the whole time. They asked for a legal opinion, and the legal opinion was, well, the other councilors didn't have the opportunity to take notes, they weren't told to, so we're not giving you back your notes. Fortunately, I was still under 70 then and had a pretty good memory, and I kept council in closed session for approximately an hour and a half to discuss in detail why that contract was not in the best interest of our community. The most grievous part of the contract was that it allowed the developer to sell the land to another party who had never been involved in the RFP and really with no plan to develop, but that was one of the options that they could have. They, on their own accord, without any interference or any say from council, could determine that the market was such that there should be up to a 2-year delay. It could have been 3 years, 2 or 3 years. So in principle, they could have held that land for 5 years and then sold it. with no plans for beachfront development, which totally negates the whole purpose of the RFP in the first place. There was an interest-free loan that would have saved almost as much interest as what they were planning to present the town as far as community improvement dollars. And I'm just hitting on a few of the highlights, and I would hope at a meeting in the future that we would look at that contract in detail and share with the public. It is my opinion that had I sat down with any member of the public and gave them the reasons why I voted opposed to the contract of the selling of the beachfront, 100 of 100 residents would have opposed it. Yet 6 members of the previous council approved that. It was unfathomable to me. It was grievously not in the best interest of our opportunity. I want to further just say that there's a component of our residency that aggressively supported these actions in the last council, and they continue to provide misinformation to discredit this council. And I hope the public realizes when they see those social media posts that they understand that these are the people that grievously supported this past council in these decisions. And hopefully what the public learned today will give us very little appetite to give those individuals any traction in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Belanger. Other questions or comments from members of council? Seeing none, I have certainly a few comments to make. Ladies and gentlemen, as I'm sure you're aware in hearing this is quite concerning. It is quite concerning to the municipality, it is quite concerning to our staff, and it is quite concerning to this council. But I think it's important to point out here, first and foremost, that whatever may have been done properly, improperly, whatever may come of this, I don't believe at this point there should be any negative impact on Zancor, Mr. Cordellucci, or the developers. Developers are business people. They approach private landowners, they approach municipalities, and they approach with a deal and an offer in many cases like this. They'll ask for the world, like many of us will do when we buy a house. And if the seller decides to give them the world, they'll take it. Doesn't mean they've done anything wrong. It's called the art of negotiation, and they're very good at it. So I think that is important. In this case, Zancor is a upstanding business partner of this community, I will say, as a developer here for many, many years, has developed a lot of homes, has put people in a lot of quality homes, and they continue to be a partner and a friend of this community. And so I just think it's very important that we be clear on that. The CEO and the mayor, the CAO and the mayor, who is the CEO of the corporation, have a fiduciary, and I would argue an ethical and moral responsibility to do always what is best for the community. As a matter of fact, mayor and council all swear an oath to that. And to hear that information was withheld from the majority of council by 2 top officers in the corporation is very discouraging, because it not only puts a blemish on them, in my opinion, but it puts a blemish on councils across this province, this country. And it's wrong in every way I can imagine. Whether you like or agree, council, every member of council has a responsibility and a right to have all the facts placed before them before they make a decision. It's also concerning to me that on many of these situations that we've heard of today, I do not recall a time where any other member of this council, with the exception of the odd exception, had a single question to ask about any of these transactions. One member of this past council has 40-plus years' experience in commercial, residential, and development lands. 40-plus years' experience. A whole bunch of letters behind their name on their card. Knows real estate and values very well, and yet had zero questions, or very little, if any, on these transactions. And important to point out that that individual also has done transactions with the parties involved here, both on the TPAL lands, both with the developers, as well as many other developers in this community. Yet, seeing property sold below value and below an appraisal, no money exchanging hands, promoting or asking or agreeing to purchase lands, not a few dollars, but millions of dollars above the value of that land, 40-plus years experience and has no questions? I find that very concerning. Back in my last term of council, and the council of the day decided to speak with Mr. Cortellucci, who was very gracious and agreed to offer up lands as a donation for redevelopment of the hospital in Collingwood. And it was always interesting to me that my deputy mayor fought this on so many reasons and so many occasions, although I never understood why. And here we are today. Records destruction. The municipality has had for many years policies and procedures in place with how we deal with documents and destruction. And to find that we have individuals here with many, many years' experience, not only as municipal employee, but as members of council, didn't follow these policies and procedures, yet boasted on a regular basis that we have to follow policies and procedures. To think that every single member of council's emails are wiped clean, with the exception of one, the one who questioned so many things that was happening, is almost unbelievable. When I became mayor in 2014, given that honor and privilege, my predecessor, God rest his soul, His Worship Cal Patterson, left me with an office full, every drawer full of everything that he had done, or just about anyway, in the past in this community, all his files, so as that I would have that corporate memory. And when I left in 2018, I did the same for my Mayor Bifulci. Yet in this term of council, when first day I was able to get into my office, I was left with a desk and one paper clip in the top left-hand drawer. Not a stapler, not a file folder, nothing. I think it's important to note that this has not been, is not, and will not be a witch hunt. It was made very clear, I think, I know to myself and to members of the council-elect at the time, that things were happening that didn't seem right by members of the public and by members of staff. And I know that the CAO has already touched on this, but I did sit down and talk with council-elect, which we received legal advice on that we could do, because we were not elected to, we were elected, but we're not in office. And it was decided that we send a letter on behalf of council-elect to the CAO asking that no documents, no files be shredded, destroyed in any way, shape, or form. There were other things that we talked about, or I talked about in that letter, and the CAO did respond in an email, sorry, not a letter, an email. But he refused and neglected to answer that one question. And that is to assure council-elect, although we knew we didn't have the authority, but to assure us that no destruction would happen. And because he refused to answer that, I then sent an email to the Chief Information Technology Officer and the clerk, and received emails back indicating that nothing had been destroyed, nor would it be. Yet to know now that there was a mass frenzy, and I say frenzy because that's what it was. In a short period of time, a week or two before the new council took office, to destroy records. Hundreds of thousands of records, which I believe leaves this municipality in jeopardy. And so it's not a witch hunt. This council, people sitting at this table, these staff members here today, are all about doing what is best for you, the taxpayer. This council is very much aware that we swore an oath to do what is best for this community. And so, as the CAO has indicated, we have turned this over to the Ontario Provincial Police. I believe that we should be asking the Attorney General as well to look into this. And I would ask that the clerk has prepared a resolution to that point. If you would please read that now, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Based on the discussion, the following motion is before Council, that the CAO's presentation on the Wasaga Beach investigation briefing be received, and that Council direct the CAO to contact the Attorney General to request an investigation into the record destruction matter.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Council, you've heard the questions. Any comments or questions? Sorry, you've heard the resolution. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Snell and Councillor Belanger, all in favor? That motion carries unanimously. All right, we're now moving on to item number 4. Under deputations, we have the Accessibility Advisory Committee read the creation of a bicycle bylaw here today for a presentation, so I would ask them to come forward. Arlene? Sorry? Yeah, I'll do that. John, thank you very much for your time. All right, Miss Arlene Wheel is here from the Accessible Advisory Committee. Arlene, welcome. Just going to ask Arlene that you turn your mic on. Great. And the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor Smith and members of council. My name is Arlene Wheel. I am here on behalf of the Accessibility Advisory Committee to request the creation of a new bylaw for the town of Wasaga Beach. A bylaw that would empower our bylaw officers to provide education and enforcement of the Provincial Highway Traffic Act pertaining to bicycles. Sharing some background. As members of the ACC, we wish to bring awareness to council members of the rising number of cyclists riding on sidewalks and putting pedestrians at risk of injuries. It is all too common to see cyclists riding on the sidewalk where there is a bike lane alongside that sidewalk. Examples are Main Street and Zoo Park Road South. Encountering cyclists on sidewalks is hazardous to those pedestrians with disabilities, such as people on mobility scooters, using rollators, canes, wheelchairs, or being visually or hearing impaired. Also for those people pushing strollers or walking with young children and or pets. Perhaps some cyclists are not aware of the law. There are so many riding on the sidewalk, I can't blame someone new to town for thinking it is okay to do so. Bylaw officers could solve this by providing education and, if necessary, enforcement. Believing or assuming that the OPP is needed for other issues leads people to look to bylaw for concerns related to bicycles already. Also, many other municipalities do have bylaws in place for bicycles. Cyclists on sidewalks are dangerous to pedestrians, as many cannot easily avoid confronting them. I often feel like I've become an unwilling participant in a game of chicken. I must quickly decide, is this cyclist going to go around me, expect me to step off the sidewalk for them? Do I step to the left or to the right? This is all running through my mind if I have seen them in time to act to avoid a collision with them. This is a photo I took about 5 minutes after such an encounter. Please note that this is an electric bicycle that can go up to 20 kilometers per hour. Since there is not enough space on the sidewalk for bicycles and pedestrians, a dangerous situation is created as many as cyclists using the sidewalk expect pedestrians to move out of the way. I have heard comments when they are in pairs as one tells the other they shouldn't be on the sidewalk, but I am the one stepping off the sidewalk. Arguments can arise if they are unaware or uncaring of the law. Courteous cyclists do not use the sidewalks. They use the bike lanes where available. This cartoon reminds me of an incident when I was nearly run down by a cyclist riding behind me and overtaking me. I am visually impaired. I have no sight in my left eye and very little sight in my right eye. I generally use a white cane and wear a safety vest. I've been walking regularly since I had to quit driving over 9 years ago. So, completely unaware that a cyclist was passing on my blind side, I was grateful and lucky that he didn't knock me down. My sight is fragile and I feel very vulnerable. I don't want to become housebound because I am too afraid that I can't walk safely on the sidewalk. When I caught up to the cyclist at the intersection, I spoke to him as we waited for the light to change. To my comment, "You almost hit me," his reply was, "You should have heard me coming with my radio." He has a radio and a bag on his bike. I did not hear his radio over the noise from the street. Hopefully, I will hear him next time, as I know he's still riding on the sidewalk. Since I have had so many close calls or near misses, I decided to do some research regarding bicycles on sidewalks and law enforcement in Wasaga Beach. When I called the OPP non-emergency line, the officer told me that bicycles on sidewalks are a bylaw matter. When I called the bylaw office, I was told that it is an OPP enforcement matter. I called OPP again. A different officer told me it is a bylaw responsibility. I tried contacting the current OPP commander, but did not receive a response to my inquiry. I contacted Carol Mulrooney's office, as she was the Minister of Transportation at the time. A staffer in the office kindly sent an email to the OPP commander on my behalf. Eventually, I received a reply from the commander confirming that bikes on the sidewalks are the responsibility of OPP in Wasaga Beach, as we do not have a bylaw in place to make it a bylaw responsibility. To change this, I would have to go before council to make a request. She said the officers who had misinformed me would be re-instructed. So, if police officers are coming from other municipalities where bylaws are in place regarding bicycles, I wonder if they assume it is the same here in Wasaga Beach. According to the Highway Traffic Act, cyclists must obey traffic laws. Cyclists have the same responsibilities as drivers, according to an OPP release from June 2022. Cyclists may not ride within a pedestrian crosswalk to cross the street. Also, not within a crosswalk or intersection or location with traffic signals. Also, cyclists cannot ride on the sidewalks. In Toronto, cyclists can be fined $60 for riding on the sidewalk. The Accessibility Committee has two goals to achieve with this presentation: make the sidewalks safer for everyone, educate and increase awareness of existing laws. Our three suggestions are as follows: enable bylaw officers to enforce cycling laws, post signs in areas of particular concern, and do scheduled social media posts to increase awareness of cycling laws. Regarding bylaw enforcement, bylaw officers can assist OPP with enforcement of existing bicycle laws. The problem is frequent but doesn't necessarily need OPP authority. The primary goal is to educate, not punish. Bylaw officers can relieve pressure for service during busy summer months. Regarding signs, this is a photo of signage on the main street in Stayner. Signage makes it clear what is allowed or not allowed legally. Signage can help reduce disagreements and tension between cyclists and pedestrians and cyclists and officers. With social media posting, bylaw can provide scheduled announcements. This method can educate and remind the public of cycling laws. Cyclists can be encouraged to use the bike lanes. We are fortunate to have them. Regarding the bike lanes, to make the bike lanes safer for all traffic and more user-friendly, I suggest that the diamond shape currently in place should be replaced with 2 chevrons. The new bike lanes in Barrie have 2 chevrons indicating the directions cyclists should be going. According to the law, bicycles must always be on the right side of traffic, going with the traffic flow. The chevrons give guidance to the direction on the bike lane. Thank you for your attention to the proposal our committee has brought forward today. Hopefully we can move forward and have a new bylaw in place for next summer. Please make the sidewalks and bike lanes safer for everyone. Thank you.
Arlene, thank you very much for your presentation. Sorry you had to endure that, and I wish I could say you won't again until we fix this problem, but hopefully not. Great presentation, very well prepared, and some great information. I wasn't aware of the chevron, so that's an important note for me. Questions for members of council? Deputy Mayor Snell?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Full disclosure, Arlene is my friend, and so I've heard personally, some of these challenges. And as we know, we've got a lot of older folks in our community. We know of, in that particular area of Zoo Park and Stonebridge, I've seen probably 4 other residents with white canes that are frequently traveling that area. So I definitely agree with your level of concern. I strongly support and endorse the education piece because obviously that is lacking. And I also like the suggestion of the signage, and I think I would be happy to put forward a motion if needed to direct staff to look into the signage option and to bring an option back to council or to direct the CAO to explore that. A little bit of a challenge with the bylaw piece, just because our bylaw team is so stretched as it is, and sometimes when you have 2 groups trying to manage a situation or control a situation, it can get a little convoluted. So that piece I would want more direction from Danny Rogers in regards to our bylaw department or whatnot, or from Rachel's feedback. But the other 2 pieces I strongly support, and thank you for the time in coming and do the presentation. It was a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Snell. Councillor Timms.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you, Arlene, and to the entire committee for the work that you have done to put this together. I was sent looking at the regulations about cycling on sidewalk, following your links, and my big concern is around children. By law, children under 10 can ride on the sidewalk, but what of the parents, right? As a grandmother raising a child, I was really worried when my granddaughter wanted to bike to Worsley School along Moseley, and did everything in my power to not let that happen. And I'm grateful that council supported a request to have staff bring back a report on safe routes to school that will be looking into these issues as well. So Wasaga Beach isn't a great community to ride a bike in, and we're so car-driven that our drivers don't really mind the cyclists. And by mind, I mean are not really concerned with cyclists. I've experienced that myself when I've been practically given a wobble by a vehicle as it goes by me. And I think back to when the Healthy Community Network was really doing a campaign on Share the Road. And I think that campaign could probably be resurrected somehow so that people become able to share a little bit better. So anything that we can come up with for accessibility is good for all of us. My concern is also the mobility scooters as well. And I don't know if there's any legislation anywhere addressing where they're supposed to ride, because some of them ride around town like they're automobiles, and many of them are on the sidewalk. 16-year-olds can start driving electric bicycles, which adds another danger, because they're a lot braver than I would be on an electric bicycle. So it's complicated, and I would support a report from staff to come back and analyze all those bits and pieces that you have addressed and some of the concerns that I and many people probably share as well. I'm also finding, as I drive along mostly in the West End, that cars are passing in the new paved shoulder and putting pedestrians and cyclists into peril as well. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, educating the public and all of us in sharing the road, basically, and sharing those sidewalks. So just my 2 cents, Your Worship, and thank you, Arlene.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Boulanger?
Yes, thank you. I'll be short, but thank you very much for your presentation. Council deals with a lot of priorities. I wasn't really aware of the safety concern, and I wasn't aware of some of the signage in other municipalities, so thank you, and I'll look forward to getting a report back from staff.
Thank you, Councillor Boulanger. Any other questions or comments from council? All right, one quick question, maybe through to Rachel. So if we create a bylaw that bylaw officers can enforce, does that then remove that obligation then from OPP officers to enforce this, or they will or can still enforce this?
It's not on. You gotta wait for the light, duh. Yeah, so thank you for your inquiry. I looked into it a little bit, and I noticed that a lot of municipalities that do have these bike bylaws actually define officers as bylaw officers or police officers. So in this case, if a bylaw was created, we could just define an officer as both parties, and then that way, perhaps it would make it easier on OPP to enforce under the bylaw, and if there's incidences for us, then we can enforce it as well. I know that some municipalities that I did reach out to that currently have these bylaws in place, other than Toronto, because I know that they're very vast and they have a very good understanding of cyclists, hopefully. But a lot of them just have some enforcement challenges when it comes to cyclists, because we can't pull people over. So that's usually why they have in the definition for OPP to enforce anyway, just to make sure that that's safely done.
Thank you, Rachel. So just to be clear, if we strengthen our bylaw, the OPP will still have that obligation and can work with us on this, correct? And I ask that because often we'll hear that's a bylaw issue. We don't have time, or we're not going to enforce that. That won't be the case in this situation.
Thank you, and no, I can confirm that I think if a bylaw was created, then it would be communicated to OPP that both would be enforcing that equally.
Andrew? Thank you, Rachel.
Mine almost didn't turn on either. I just wanted to share with council as well, the new police contract, we have the ability to identify which bylaws we would like the OPP to enforce. So if there was ever a difference of an opinion, we could actually spell that out as part of the contract.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Council. Sorry, Mr. CAO. All right, so I'm hearing not only do we want to receive this information, but I'm hearing we want a report back from staff so as that we can move forward with this. Could you want to read that as amended, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship. I also heard a education campaign from Councillor Timms, so I will put this as a recommendation that the Joint Committee of the Whole and Council receive the deputation from Arlene Will on behalf of the Accessibility Advisory Committee pertaining to the creation of bicycle bylaw. That staff be directed to bring back a report to Council on safe cycling to include considerations for signage and a bylaw. And further, that staff be directed to prepare an education campaign to include laws and rules for cyclists and a bicycle safety guideline to be released in the spring.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The Deputy Mayor just asked if she can make a final comment, but I think you've read the question, so I think we need to call the vote. Is that correct?
If we get a mover and seconder on the motion, you can open the floor back up for questions.
Thank you. So you've heard the question. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Timms, Councillor DeLeo. All right, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to request just a friendly amendment to the motion where you're specific in regards to a report about bicycle safety or cycling safety. I would like to extend that to non-motorized forms of transportation so that we're also considering scooters, electric bikes, skateboards, that kind of thing, non-motorized, if I could.
Just for clarification on e-scooter requirements, is that?
Yeah, I think a good capture, and perhaps Andrew, you can clarify, but if it were formed as non-motorized forms of transportation, would that still include scooters and e-bikes, or are they motorized, I guess?
Mr. CAO.
That's a good question. I'm not sure if Kevin is the best person to ask. I think what you're looking for, correct me if I'm wrong, is anything other than human-powered. So it could be electric, it could be gas-powered, anything that moves faster than a walking pace. How to translate that to a motion? So I think it's anything motorized.
Yes, it could even be non-vehicular, right, or whatnot. Just basically, I think if we're going to take the time and create the report and create a bylaw, let's make sure that it's fulsome to include all of the other problematic units as well, other than the vehicles, basically, would be my thought.
So I'm hearing you, however, I have some concerns that there are people with disabilities who use scooters that may prefer to be on a sidewalk versus a road, and I see that our speaker, Arlene, has her hand up. Arlene?
Thank you, Your Worship. From my research, I understand that mobility scooters are legally required to use the sidewalk, and e-bikes are legally not supposed to be on the sidewalk. That there's a differential between whether it's a mobility vehicle or whether it's an e-bike, from my understanding.
No, I thank you, and you're probably, you know more about this, it seems, than any of us, so you're probably right. I think staff is getting the gist of what it is that we're looking for in the report. And so if we're good with that, we'll just call the question here, and I'm sure staff has a good understanding as to what we want. So you have heard the question, members of council. It has been moved and seconded. Could I call the vote, please? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you, Arlene. We appreciate it very much. You have a great day and stay safe on the sidewalks. All right. Item number 4.2 is Mr. Dave Morrison, Re-Assister City, and he is here today. I seen his smiling face. There he is. Good morning, David. The floor is yours.
I made the same mistake, so the person should feel comfortable. Once again, Your Worship, members of council, good afternoon, members of staff. Thank you for having giving me this opportunity to speak to you about an idea that's been kicking around for quite some time, actually, but I'm here basically at this point to resurrect the idea and to hope mostly to inform this council and then to look forward as to how we can progress within it. Once again, my name is Dave Morrison, and I've become involved in numerous aspects of the community over the last little while, and am enjoying all of those opportunities. Allow me to give you a little bit of background to start with. In 2019, I made almost the exact same presentation to the council at that time, and it was well received by everyone, including Councillor Belanger at that time. And the idea was that Wasaga Beach consider pursuing an international sister city. There was a motion passed that it be sent to staff for review. A motion was then passed, and then, of course, COVID happened, and like so many things, everything got sort of put in the closet and sat down for good reason. We weren't going anywhere, so it's not like there was any type of rush for it. And then in 2022, the council at the time passed a motion that created something that, to be fair, I've given a title to because I didn't know what else to do with it. So I've called it the Sister City Working Committee. It was a motion that was passed that included a specific subset of people, including myself, to review this and to report back. We met approximately a month ago, and obviously the various people involved changed because titles change and personnel change and all the rest of that routine. We went through the meeting, and it was our view, after some discussion, that it was only fair that this council get a review, because with the exception of Councillor Belanger, none of you were involved in the original decision. So it would be presumptuous and inappropriate to move forward with anything. And to be fair, there was nothing to move forward with without an approval for you people to actually create a partnership, but I thought you needed a little bit of background on it first. So if you will allow me to move back into that mode, I'll simply tell you that this is something that can provide some extraordinary opportunities for various groups within your community, and it ends up being something that generates a positive spirit, volunteer commitments and opportunities, and, if emphasized properly, an extraordinary opportunity for youth. Before I get into all of those, what I considered wonderful benefits, allow me to clear the air about one particular thing. Back when these things became very popular, back in the 70s, early 80s, this was very much based on economic development. And the Mississauga became the poster child for that type of thing. They went and got a huge number of partnerships, many of them tied to branch plants and that type of thing. Even Barrie, our close neighbor, was fortunate to get a factory called YOM, Diageo Ontario Manufacturing, that was involved with providing parts to Honda. And they chose us over a number of different communities, in part because we had a relationship with Murayama, Japan, and since for the first 5 years their intention was that their top three, their primary executives were going to be from Japan, and they wanted them to feel comfortable in the community, and they felt that a community that had already expressed itself for an international partnership with Japan would be welcoming. And however, I also have to tell you that the world has changed, and that's not the direction things have gone over the last little while. And the reality is, I don't want there to be any misconception that suddenly there's any concept of this bringing in a branch plant to Wasaga Beach. There are economic spin-offs, but they are retail in nature. People that come here there's a boon for tourism, the opportunity for people to purchase things and to see things and to pay for tourism costs. So there is a benefit, but it is relatively small. We would do it for different reasons. I can tell you that my own personal experience, simply so that you understand, I'm not asking you to buy a pig in a poke. I actually know what I'm talking about. There are many things I'm completely ignorant about, but this is one topic where I do have a background. I served for 25 years on Barrie City, on the City of Barrie's International Relations Committee, and was chair of it for 20. As of my departure, because I was no longer a resident and felt it was inappropriate for non-residents to hold residents' volunteer positions, there were, and still are, 4 formal sister cities scattered in different parts of the world. And Murayama, Japan, Zweibrücken, Germany, the borough of Harrogate, North Yorkshire, England, and Arras, France. Each community is different. We need to have great flexibility. A very, very quick story. The Youth Ambassadors Program, which was designed by International One of the things we discovered was that in dealing with Germany and Japan, the Germans insisted it include school, and they wouldn't come for less than a month. The Japanese insisted it could not include school and would only come for 2 months, or 2 weeks. So, as I said to the committee at the time, we need to be flexible on all of that because we can solve that. A few of the basics as to how it would work. I think, first of all, you need to understand that whatever its title, be it International Relations or Sister City Committee or whatever, it's essentially a collection of volunteers who volunteer to serve on this committee to run the operations of it. I would recommend that there be a member of council appointed to it just to provide that continuity for council, and also a staff member to take the minutes and maintain the record. From then, there's a number of different aspects of it. You go out and you find a partnership to start with, wherever that may be. I have what I believe to be very strong contacts in Japan, throughout Western Europe, Australia. There are a variety of different places that I would look to should we get to that point. To answer a couple of the other questions as we move forward, I have always argued that it should be done on the basis of a plane-to-plane funding, where because the local people can find better deals and more reasonable costs than can any foreigner, it's just the way the world works. So what happens is we would pay to travel to whatever country, like their fares, but then they would pick up all costs from the minute the plane lands until the minute the plane takes off, and conversely, we would do the same. They would arrive at Toronto, we'd pick them up, and we'd absorb all the costs. Part of that is to try and impress upon people the benefits of homestay. It provides a great cultural experience. And then one of the financial considerations at this is, I believe that we take, someone made the comment that they were concerned that this would be rich kids get a nice vacation. And I made it very clear that I didn't believe that that would ever be possible, because we take the best kids, not the richest, and we find organizations, be they businesses or service clubs, to contribute to support those people that have financial needs. And then the benefits to the community are very straightforward. From a personal, obviously, on the individual level, the people that are going on the trip have a clear benefit. I'm not going to deny that. They clearly have this wonderful cultural opportunity. But in addition to that, it's been our experience that when they come back, the community benefits. For instance, the youth that have gone in the past make presentations both to service clubs and to local schools, elementary schools, where it fits into the curriculum, about where they have been and why they've been and how that affected them and all the rest of that. In addition to that, we have had choirs put on performances about music that they discovered when they were overseas. We have had sports groups talk about the expansion of the game, or whatever game it might have been, rugby or whatever, in whatever the country is. So there's great opportunities. In this community, I would say that obviously all of those things, I think it deals with youth, sports and athletics, arts, music, and of course, one of the most significant that could happen is very serious consideration for our seniors community, who would have the opportunity, as I think they already do to some extent, in waving the flag for Wasaga Beach. We know we have an extraordinary community. This is another opportunity for us to prove that to the world at large and to bring the world into Wasaga Beach. And so I believe it's something that we don't have, that I believe is exceptionally important and could reap great benefits. I would also add that until we get the high school that we need, the more things we can do for youth, the better, however they be structured. It simply makes sense. The next step, quite honestly, and I'm probably close to my time, but I'm trying really hard, and for a guy like me that loves to talk, it's almost impossible, but I'm almost done. The next step, is, in my mind, is for this council, through motion, to approve the concept of a sister city in principle, and then to refer it back, presumably, to the Sister City Working Committee to do the research and to report back. I'm willing to volunteer my time and my resources to come back with a recommendation with regard to to an actual specific partner. And at that point, you're all caught up to date, and I'm happy to answer whatever questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Dave. Questions or comments? Councillor Timms?
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you, Dave, for coming forward. I had recently just heard about your efforts with a sister city. I'm the council rep on the Tourism and Economic Development Advisory Committee, and we have a couple of members on the committee who have been looking into the idea of this very thing with a little bit more of a tourism focus and a little closer to home. They were hoping to build on the Quebec Wasaga Beach relationship and find a similar town in Quebec that they could come up with some benefits, and haven't moved along very far with that yet.
Excuse me, if this helps, I met with them last week.
Oh.
All right, and they were excited to support this, and however council wishes to proceed, we'll work together on however that would progress.
Terrific. Who did you meet with?
Okay, I knew that was going to happen.
Okay, we're not going to get into back and forth. You
I missed
finish
the
your
meeting.
comments. You finish your
Apologies, I
comments.
thought I was helping with that.
No, that's fine. You finish your comments, Councillor, and we'll move on.
Sorry, I missed that meeting, Dave, so I was just curious. Sorry about that, Your Worship. And perhaps there's already an opportunity to continue the work that you were working on within the Subcommittee of Tourism and Economic Development. I believe doesn't particularly require council approval to strike a new committee or task force to do that. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Snell, and then Councillor Ego.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Thank you for your presentation. I appreciate it. I'm familiar with the sister city concept. In doing a little bit of research for today's presentation, I also came across some articles of other communities like Brampton in particular that have done away with it, not really seeing the benefit from the economic development spin. But I can definitely get behind all of the community warmth and fuzzies in terms of the youth experience and the exchange experience, and the cultural experience, and the opportunity to embrace and welcome people into our community. 100% support. But what I would not want to see is $1 of tax dollars to go towards to supporting it, frankly. I think, to be honest, I think in times of economic constraints and pressures that we're seeing, we've got this council very ambitious 84 council priorities, so our staff is already quite challenged with what is ahead of them to accomplish and help us to achieve. So I wouldn't want to see staff resources or funds go towards it, but otherwise I support it being developed from the cultural exchange perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Snell. Councillor Ego.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Thank you, Dave, for your presentation. Brings back memories here. I did coordinate and take exchanges to the high Arctic, a couple of them, and our kids were involved in all of those, as was the community. So my questions are, what age student do you look for in these?
Generally, basically junior high school. We're talking about possibly grade 8s, 9, and 10s. I mean, although to be fair, I have no problem with other ones. In Barrie, when we were balancing the needs between different youth between different youth ones, we tended to direct the 2-week summer program to younger youth, and the larger month-long one to older youth. That might have been 17 at the time.
Yep, thanks. Is there government funding? In our day, I know we got government funding, that's why we had to have a certain age group to meet that criteria, because they were promoting exchanges. So is there any government funding ever for yours?
There is no current provincial or federal funding for this type of program. To make it not a mystery, the City of Barrie contributes a very small portion of their budget considerations. We're talking, they're running for an allotment in their last budget, I believe, of $34,000. But they're running 4 sister cities with that amount of money.
Okay, to clarify on ours, so what we did, we had to raise half because then we had to pay for the Inuit children to come back to Brampton, so they did not have to do any fundraising. But ours was really parent-driven, and it took us 2 years to raise money for a trip. So the parents were very, very involved in fundraising, and then the government was for the Inuit children. So I'd certainly support, I mean, I love exchanges, but I think the parents and families would have to be involved. I'm with Deputy Mayor Snell here on asking the town for the money. But I think it's a great way to raise awareness in a community when they all get involved. So the parents, the families, and it's a win-win. That's my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Belanger?
Thank you, through your worship. I would just ask that I support it, but that there be a consideration too. I've talked to the COO quite often, and he speaks of Sarasota, Florida, which is a community that we may want to emulate to a certain extent and take some of the infrastructure and some of the things they have done and incorporate it into our town. So, whether it's a high school age where it could become a bit of a project where they're bringing back ideas, or whether it's seniors or whatever, but that we are seeing things in a sister city that we want to bring back and possibly incorporate in our own, that would be another aspect of the exchange. So be a consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, so I think what we're hearing is the motion currently reads for information, but I think I'm hearing that council would like a report back on this to get more information from staff, and I'm sure they could sit down and have conversations with Dave, who has a lot of knowledge on this as well. So shall we just end a report back from staff to the end of that, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I added that the Economic Development Division be directed to bring back a report on the feasibility of partnering with a sister city.
All right, thank you very much. You've heard the question. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor Snell, seconded by, I'm sorry, Dave, go ahead.
May I ask a question with regard to that motion? So I'm just trying to figure out what the status is of the existing working committee, because at the moment, although the Economic Development Chair was in attendance, we had a separate meeting later, and there were discussions at that meeting that whether they should be separate or together. I just would like to clarification as to with whom I'm working directly in this process as it moves forward. So what would the status be of the Sister City Working Committee?
So, Madam Clerk, do we know, or Mr. CAO, do we have any idea on that? I guess what I would say, Dave, is we're asking for a report back, and that report will include the status of that current, what we've done, what we now have in the queue, if you will, with regards to that committee, and then the recommendations as to how council should move forward with this. All right, I don't see your mic on, so, all right, you've heard the question then, council. Could I have a mover and a seconder? It was moved by, I think, Deputy Mayor Snell, seconded by Councillor Eagle. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. All right, we're now moving on to presentations, and at this time, however, we're going to take a lunch break, and we will be back at 12:35. And welcome back, everybody. So we'll be back at 1:05.
We're live, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Clerk. Welcome back, everybody. We're now resume the meeting, and we're on item number 5, presentations, and 5.1 is our 2024 budget draft number 2. And I'll turn the floor over to our CFO, Jocelyn. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good afternoon, everyone. Today we have the 2024 budget, the final proposed draft 2. And if I could just have you move to the next slide, or, okay, here we have it. Thank you. So I'm just going to focus on the 24 budget highlights, and we're going to talk a little bit about the infrastructure investment and our fleet maintenance, public safety, recreation and well-being, education and youth development, and environmental sustainability, and our fiscal summary and reserves. So these are major highlights of what this budget is focused on. So there's significant capital works allocated for these projects that are shown on the slide, and I'll go through them a little bit. For roads, that we have $9.5 million for work on several different projects. River Road West, this includes the reconstruction and urbanization of River Road West between Veterans Way and Blueberry Trails. And this is a distance of about 2.5 kilometers. It includes storm, sewer, curb and gutter, sidewalk, and bike lanes, and a new signalized intersection at River Road West and Silver Birch Avenue. And this project's expected to span into 2025. And this is one of our major capital works projects for the 2024 budget. For Beach Drive, we have the Class EA that will be revisited to reconsider the preferred solution, and that includes a pedestrian corridor and reintroduces the vehicle traffic. The budget reflects the engineering fees associated with the EA amendment, as well as anticipated redesign for works. For Mosley Street, this is a carryover amount anticipated for costs related to engineering consulting fees to complete the detailed design for this high-capacity urban road. So then we have water and wastewater projects, and we're spending approximately $10.9 million. We are doing the water pollution control plant biosolids project, the WPCP UV system upgrade. We have the West End water storage and water main, and a couple of local improvement projects. And some of the other public works projects we'll spend about $8.8 million on include the water tower, site preparation at the West End Depot location, and we have some vehicle carryovers from 2023, as well as our replacement and new vehicles for 2024. So ensuring the safety and security of our residents remains a top priority, and the budget includes provisions for enhancing our fire safety with the development of a fire master plan and community risk assessment. The town is investing dollars towards environmental sustainability through the installation of EV charging stations at the Twin Pad Arena and Library, and the bylaw department's new vehicle is a hybrid SUV. So you can see some of the amounts that we'll be spending on these items. Investing in our youth and the well-being of our residents is an investment that will help to build our future. And through a partnership with the school board, the new school in the Sunnydale development has a gymnasium that the town will use to provide new programming services and activities and broaden our geographic outreach of community services. We are allocating resources to support the youth center. We're building the new library collection and spending resources on our parks, which includes adding playground equipment and providing maintenance and replacements. So you can see some of the values that we have there in our parks area. We're spending $1.4 million, and we are spending $2.5 million on the agreement with the school board. So looking at our fiscal summary, the operating revenues for '24 are $55.4 million. And of that amount, 32.2 comes from taxation to support the operating expenses of $51.2 million. And the remaining balance is contributed to reserves for future requirements and good fiscal planning. The capital budget revenues are $27.3 million, and of that amount, $3.4 million comes from taxation. The total capital budget expenditures are $35.5 million, and the additional funding required comes from reserves. The cost to carry the debt for the 24 budget year is $2.8 million, and each year the province issues the town the annual repayment limit. And this is a prescribed calculation that the province uses to determine how much debt the municipality is permitted to carry. So in 2023, our annual repayment limit was $9.7 million. The town is only incurring debt carrying costs of $2.8 million. So the town is well below the maximum level that is permitted. And many municipalities carry debt at a similar level to that of which the town is utilizing. So on the table on this slide shows how the projected reserves at the end of the current year, 2023, are expected to change by the end of the 2024 budget year. So it's projected at this time that the 23 general reserve balances, and those are the amounts which are in the reserve and discretionaries column, those will total $34.7 million, and then next to that is the obligatory reserves, which includes DCs, the building department reserve, and some restricted grant funding that we receive from the province and the federal government, and that will be about $22.8 million. And so then we have an opening total reserve balance for 24 of $57.5 million. And then recognizing the various transactions that occur within the reserve accounts, at the end of 2024, the total reserve balances are expected to decrease to $41.8 million. The main change in the reserve balances is the use of the development charges for the capital projects, such as the River Road West project and the West End water main and the water sewer projects. So just as a little refresher, it is important to remember that DCs are put away in a reserve account to be used at a later time when eligible projects are being done that can draw on those DCs. So in 2024, there are significant high-cost capital projects that are eligible to draw on those DC reserves. The other large draw on the general reserves comes from the water wastewater projects. The water wastewater program is self-sustaining, and that means that all the funding that is needed to run that program is raised through the water wastewater rates that are charged to the users. And so those wastewater rates, our wastewater reserves, are maintained in the general reserves and discretionary reserve column, and that's where, when we need to use those reserves for capital projects, as we have many wastewater projects this year in 24, we draw on those reserves. So that would bring them down. That's the $12 million you're seeing there. Most of that is the water wastewater. The town's financial position remains healthy, and part of the fiscal strategy is to replenish the reserves each year, especially when there are less intensive capital project years. And this strategy is built into our long-term forecast. So in summary, the changes reflected in the 24 budget from the 23 budget year represent an overall tax rate increase of 5.6%. And for the average household assessment for Wasaga Beach, which is $333,000, this represents about $204 per year. The budget is reasonable and well-balanced to deliver on the many services provided for the taxpayers, with investments in infrastructure, recreational programming and facilities, educational and cultural opportunities, and maintains a strong fiscal plan to address asset management, maintenance, and planning for future requirements. So with that, Your Worship, that completes the short presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jocelyn, questions or comments from members of council? Seeing none, all right, we'll move along. We do have A resolution that the report titled 2024 Budget Draft 2 to the Joint Committee of the Whole and Council meeting on November 30th, 2023 be received, and that proposed 2024 capital budget as amended add $52,000 for the youth center landscaping project funded through taxation, and that the Joint Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that the proposed 2024 operating and capital budgets be approved as amended. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all mover and a seconder, please. Councillor DeLeo and Councillor Eagle, all in favor? Carries unanimously. Thank you, Jocelyn. Moving on to item number 6, government relations, and we do have a verbal update, re-facility allocation policy and refund allocation policy from our CAO, it says here, but is it you or Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start, and then if Chris wants to add anything, I can certainly pass it over to Chris.
Excellent, thank you.
Following the discussion at the previous council on the ice allocation policy for the new Twin Pad Arena, Director Roos took it back and was looking at incorporating all of the comments and feedback that he had received from council and was prepared to bring back a revised policy today. I did mention to Director Roos that it might be wise to reach out to some stakeholders in the community before doing that. So we did have direction from council to report back at this meeting on any amended changes. My request of council is if you can give us a couple more weeks, we'd like to reach out to people who are impacted by these policies and get their thoughts on it, and then we can incorporate any of their feedback into some amended changes and then report back quite quickly to council.
All right, questions or comments, anybody? No, I think it's an excellent idea to speak to the stakeholders, the people who are going to be impacted the most, so I don't see any issues here, so that's fine. Andrew, anything to add, Chris? Good, all right. All right, moving on to item number 7, then approval of the agenda. It is recommended that we resolve that the contents of the agenda November 30th, 2023 be approved as circulated. Could I have a mover and a seconder for this, please? Deputy Mayor Snell and Councillor Timms, all in favor? Motion carries unanimously, and we'll now move into open forum. It's a time for anyone in the audience or online to speak to any of the items on the agenda today. Madam Deputy Clerk, do we have anyone online?
Thank you, Worship. I do not have anybody registered to speak today.
All right, thank you. And I'll ask if there's anyone in the audience who wishes to come forward, state your name and address, and speak to any items on the agenda today. Big smiles from the library ladies, but other than that, I'll ask a second time, a third time. All right, nobody here to do that today, so that's item number 8. We'll move on to item number 9, and I will now pass community services over to Councillor DeLeo. Councillor?
Thank you, Mayor Smith. I will now review the Community Services Business Unit of Committee of the Whole. All items listed below will be approved by one resolution. There will be no separate discussions of these items unless a council member requests it, in which case the item will be removed from the consent list and considered upon the appropriate business unit. The following item, 9.1.2, has been pulled from the consent agenda for separate consideration and vote. It was pulled by myself, Councillor DeLeo. I will now pass the consent recommendation. Resolved that the Community Services section of Committee of the Whole hereby received the November 30th, 2023 Consent List 9.1, and that all the recommendations contained therein be adopted, excluding agenda items pulled from the motion and voted on separately. I will now move to the item 9.
Madam Chair,
Sorry.
can we just get a mover and seconder for the consent motion?
My bad. May I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Eagle, seconded by Deputy Mayor Snell. All in favor? Passed unanimously. My bad. Okay. I will now move to the item pulled, 9.1.2, pulled by myself. Would anybody else like to make a comment or ask questions before I proceed? No? Okay, then I will proceed. Thank you. Okay. In order to open the warming overnight centers, there must be a temperature of minus 30 degrees Celsius with the wind chill. Minus 30 degrees is extreme and dangerous as a guideline. Even at minus 20, frostbite can take place. My question now would be to Fire Chief Craig Williams. Is there any way we can raise that temperature to minus 20 degrees Celsius instead of minus 30? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair DeLeo. Ultimately, it's up to the discretion of council to make that decision. The report put in front of you is to provide a series of guidelines and understand what the staff recommendation is for this project. Really, the program is trying to just formalize what we implemented last year, where we had an extreme cold event, and at the last minute, we opened a warming shelter. We did have 2 individuals join us that night, and I'm sure they were quite thankful for the opportunity. And when we were developing the formalized process this year, the activation temperatures was something that we certainly spent a lot of time looking at, trying to determine what is the best method of doing that. Part of our research told us that there is different temperature thresholds that are being used for different regions of the province. So for example, Muskoka uses a temperature threshold of -35. In Simcoe County, it's -30. Larger urban areas such as Hamilton, it's often -15. And now in Toronto, they used to be -15, and just in the last few weeks, they've actually changed that to -5. So the rationale for using -30 in Simcoe County is that the Simcoe-Muskoka District Health Unit, they have an extreme cold vulnerable population emergency notification procedure that they use to inform municipalities when vulnerable individuals of the community might be at risk. So we chose to use that same temperature to activate our centers. I did want to point out that the centers are really not intended to either solve or compensate for the existing homeless shelter program that we have here in Simcoe County, and I think that's important. What the attempt here was to do was to provide an alternate option for temporary respite for individuals who unexpectedly come across extreme temperatures. So an example of an individual that might come to our shelter could be an elderly individual in the community who has a home and maybe their furnace has failed in the middle of the night. They don't have any other options to go to, and we can take them in. It may also certainly serve a portion of the homeless population. We know that as the temperature drops, that the capacity at the homeless shelters is going to increase, and they have a finite threshold as well. And our hope would be that we can serve some of that overflow that the shelters may not be able to serve. So in Simcoe County, there are a total of 9 shelters that are currently in operation, and they're servicing on average about, or have available, I should say, about 224 beds available at this point. So one thing that I monitor, and it's public information as well, the county has a public website where anyone can go on and see in live time how many beds are being occupied. That website is open.simcoe.ca, and that serves as a really good tool to understand is there capacity in the shelters or not. What I could tell you is I did look this morning knowing that there could be a question about this. So this morning, and it's a nice day out, there were 206 individuals occupying beds in Simcoe County shelters, and that represents about 91% of the capacity in the shelter system. Here locally, we're served by a shelter, a homeless shelter, that's located on Beechwood Road. It is currently in a temporary location in a motel, and they have a capacity of 10 beds. As a comparison, if we were to look at Toronto and what their circumstances and why they may have adjusted to -5, the last that I have read, Toronto has almost 10,000 people trying to access either their shelter system or some form of their social services. They also have a budget of just over $16 million. They have about 60 shelters, obviously dedicated municipal staff, and a whole host of NGOs that support their services. So I think when we try and figure out what is the correct activation level, it is a little bit difficult. We don't have the same demand as the larger urban centers, and we're also limited with our resource capacity to offer. So the -30 for us was a consistent approach with other municipalities in our area. It's driven by the decision making of the health unit, which is helpful, but it certainly could be any other temperature. What I would have a hard time letting you know today is if we were to select another temperature, what that might do to the frequency of the center. So I know that at -30, based on a 5-year average, we would be opening 1 to 2 times during the winter. If we were to drop that to -20 or -15, that number is going to increase. I would suggest that it could be about a dozen times if we hit -20, but that's a guess, obviously, and we might need to do a little bit more research to determine if we can deliver the same service with the resources and the staff we have available once that frequency increases. So I hope that answers your question.
Councillor Timms, question?
Thank you, Councillor DeLeo, and through you, and not a question, just a comment. When I read the report and I started looking around at some of the things mentioned in the report, the Beechwood Road shelter is not just for our town, but it's a huge regional pull with only 10 beds. So is there any time that there's room in that shelter for people? I was wondering, right? And you know, probably not the time to ask the details on all of that, if it's short stay or what it is, but we certainly have a shortage of places for people to go if they end up homeless in an emergency.
Thank you, Councillor Timms. So the website that I mentioned previously, it actually has a wealth of information, and it does drill down to the local shelters. So when I looked this morning, 8 out of the 10 beds were taken out of that shelter, and that shelter is intended to serve South Georgian Bay. So the majority, I'm told, that the majority of their residents do come from Wasaga Beach and Collingwood, but it is a large population that it's served, and I would suspect that as temperatures drop, then for sure the beds become occupied very quickly.
Mayor Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Craig, to the fire chief. Chief, last year when we had the extreme cold incident, I know that you and your staff by law were hard at out there in the different areas in the bush and whatnot, looking for people to come in, and you didn't have a lot of success, surprisingly enough to me. Could you just touch on that so council's aware of what the trials and tribulations were of you and your team, Rachel and her team, trying to get people to come in and it wasn't successful?
Thank you, Mayor Smith, through the chair. So we had 2 individuals who joined us for the evening. 100% they were homeless and they would have been exposed that night, and I don't know what the outcome would have been, probably not great. What we did that event was we informed the Busby shelter, because they have an outreach program, and certainly through their experiences they know where a number of vulnerable individuals are residing. Obviously our firefighters were aware, paramedics became aware, and the OPP. And my experience was that the majority of the individuals that were brought to the center, one was by one of our counselors who made us aware of an individual who needed help, and the other was by the OPP who directed the individual to our assistance. So I think it was very much worthwhile, hence why we're trying to formalize this process. I think it is a needed service, but even if we increase the frequency, I don't suspect that we're going to have 50 individuals, with us, because I think there is a shelter system in place that is serving the majority of the people who experience chronic homelessness. It's just for the one-offs, the ones that aren't prepared to brave these cold temperatures or that have the emergency in their own house, that we need to watch out for. So we will see this year if this program is approved, but I suspect we're going to be dealing with numbers of potentially half a dozen individuals, not a huge amount more than that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Belanger, you have a question?
Just a comment, thank you, through Councillor. I know that the Salvation Army has a motel voucher program. I don't know if it's so much out of the cold that they use so much, but it's been my experience with a number of people that I've been involved with that they have relationships with some other citizens that are in cottage courts or in homes. I know of a couple of encampments where they have a relationship where if it gets too cold, they're going to someone's home and spending the night. So I'm just saying is that this is an assist, but there's other mechanisms out there that are also in play. I haven't experienced too often where we're running across an individual that is left out in the cold and that we have a death by freezing. I think for the most part we've been able to handle what comes up during the very cold weather. Thank you.
Fire Chief?
Thank you, Councillor Blanger, and through the chair. So that would be my experience as well, is we have a very small number of individuals who might experience hypothermia or in fact die from cold because there is supports in system. A lot of times the issue is accessing those supports and making sure they're close enough to where people reside that they can get there safely. You mentioned the motel voucher program, and I do know that the Busby Centre also participates in that. So the individuals who access the Busby Centre, they're either housed at the motel itself or they are sent to another location, but they do have access to vouchers. My understanding is their primary funding source is the County of Simcoe. So in the event as well that the local shelter becomes overwhelmed, I know they have the potential to work together as a larger shelter system to try and move people to, to safety.
Thank you. I have one more follow-up, if I may. So if I understand this correctly, last year, when we did the Warming Center, was that a one-time thing that we did in Wasaga Beach?
Thank you, Chair DeLeo. It was actually our first time opening up. We did not have a program in place, and when we saw these extreme temperatures, we received a request from members of council to open our doors and do something about it. So we kind of had a few hours to throw something together. We did. I think it worked as well as it could for that first night. And the hope was that we could bring together a formal presentation or formal project, I should say, a program that could deal not just with extreme cold, but extreme heat, because both of them are very dangerous, so that we have a path forward, so that as staff, we know what to expect and we can anticipate the needs of the community. And, of course, monitor how this goes. And certainly next year, if we found that maybe we're missing the mark, maybe the temperature is set inappropriately, maybe we need additional resources in means of staff, equipment, that sort of thing, that we can come back to staff through the budget process and make sure we do this properly, because I think we're all on the same page. We care for our vulnerable community, we want to do what's right, and we just have to find the right path of doing that.
Thank you. So that I'm aware, like I'm more knowledgeable and let the public know, going forward, the Oakview room at Recplex will be opened for temperatures under -30 for the evening?
Yes. So what the program calls for, and again, there's two pieces to it. There's extreme cold, which the activation level is when it's -30 for greater than 2 hours in a 24-hour period. Then the program gets implemented. In the summertime for extreme heat, it's daytime temperatures of at least 31 degrees and overnight temperatures of at least 20 degrees or a humidex of 40 degrees for a minimum of 2 days, so a prolonged heat event. Then there's really two phases of this. So the first is the passive centers opening. So we would see that happening during normal business hours. We would communicate with the public, let them know that we're offering these centers. During normal business hours, we encourage community members to either attend the Recplex or the public library, and they can access public areas of the building in order to get it out of the elements, okay? So they can access clean water, washrooms. It's passive though, okay? In the event that we need to continue operating overnight, then we would utilize the Oakview room, which is located at the Recplex, announce the time that individuals will show up at. They can spend the night there, and then at approximately 8 o'clock in the morning, we would ask them to leave. They can rejoin the passive daytime centers, and in the event that the weather continues, we would reopen up again in the evenings.
Follow up on that. So if there's a few people in the rec center during the day, and let's say it's -25, and there's no shelter beds available for these people, or we're at the motels, would you open up the Oakview for them?
I think if we knew that there was a need, and obviously pending, availability of space and staff, we would need to make sure it's a safe environment, before we open something up. But absolutely, I think we're in the business of that, and if we knew that there was a dire need, we would do what, ever is reasonable to protect people.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. I will now read the motion that the report titled to the Joint Committee of the Whole of the and Council meeting of November 30th, 2023 be received, and that the JCAC approve the Municipal Emergency Warming and Cooling Center policy attached to this report, forming Appendix A. May I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Mayor Smith and seconded by Councillor Belanger. All in favor? Passed unanimously. This concludes the Community Services Business Unit of Committee of the Whole. I will now pass the chair to Councillor Timms for Public Works section.
Thank you, Councillor DeLeo. I'm aware that we only have one item in the Public Works section, and it is the River Resources Committee minutes. I will read the recommendation and then ask for comments and a mover and a seconder. That the Joint Committee of the Whole and Council receive the River Resources Committee minutes of July 26, 2023 for information. Are there any comments or questions about that report or those minutes? Seeing none, may I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor DeLeo, Deputy Mayor Snell, all in favor? Thank you. This concludes the Public Works section, and I will now pass the chair to Councillor Belanger. I think, although, sorry, perhaps bypass Councillor Belanger?
Yes.
I will bypass Councillor Belanger and move on to Deputy Mayor Snell for general government. My brain hurts.
Thank you, Councillor Timms. So I'm aware that a couple of items have been pulled from this section. 9.4.1, number 1, which was pulled by both Councillor Timms and myself, as well as 9.4.1, number 4, which was pulled by Councillor Timms, and then 9.4.5, pulled by Councillor Timms, 9.4.7, which was pulled by myself. Before reading the motion, is there any other comments on any of the other items that are included in the general government section? Okay, seeing none. Resolved that the general government section of Committee of the Whole hereby received the November 30th, 2023 consent list item 9.4, and that all the recommendations contained therein be adopted, excluding agenda items pulled from the motion and voted on separately. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor DeLeo, Councillor Ego, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Moving on to 9.4.1. Number 1 was a correspondence that was dated for October 17th, 2023, received by the town of Collingwood regarding a motion around the Small Business Enterprise Center. Go ahead, Councillor Timms, for your comments or questions, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I do just want to comment that I feel that the Small Business Enterprise Center does some great work, and having been actually involved with it when I worked here at the town and had the pleasure of sitting on that board during that time, saw that firsthand. I do, however, think that there is quite a perception amongst our business community that is really a Collingwood-centric organization, and sometimes there's a little trepidation about getting involved in the programming or reaching out for the program. I would like that, and I think you're probably going to echo this, that I think that we need to look at an opportunity to provide a satellite office on a regular interval, that we can perhaps bring the Small Business Enterprise Center to Wasaga Beach so that we are seen as, you know, a direct partner in this operation. So just a comment, Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Timms. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll add mine. I agree with you as well. They are a mighty resource, not only for coaching for new business owners and entrepreneurs, but also sources of funding, both provincially and federally. I also agree that I feel that it's imbalanced, and if they're asking for not only annual support, which we've done financially all these years, but now increasing in their request because of lack of funding from other sources, then I would absolutely agree that we need to sharpen the pencil and ask for a more specific service to our entrepreneurs. Because, again, I think accessibility is a big thing, but communication as well. And Deputy CAO, I understand this project is sitting with you, and so when you go forward in those negotiations, I would love to know from them clearly, how are they planning to communicate with our entrepreneurs, and how can we support that connection of communication, whether it's when they open up a business permit, it activates them, and gets sent to them so that they can introduce themselves to the resident or the business owner. I'm not quite sure, but I definitely would like to see this thing fleshed out as well. If you have any comments, Deputy CAO?
Yes, I can respond. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So we met Tim Newton, so we gave Tim a tour of the TPAL a week or two back, and he was quite impressed, and they did share with us that they're seeking, more provincial funding, which is the letter in front of council today for support. Currently, we pay them, I think, $12,500 a year. They're looking to up that by about $5,000 to $17,500 and change. So the economic development manager and myself want to get a report back to council. It's a significant increase, and we want to make sure that, do our businesses benefit in the way we think they should benefit? So we're looking for some surveys from businesses that had their business plan and were successful and opened the doors. Also businesses that worked with the SPEC but didn't open their doors, so we're trying to understand the whole environment. And we did let Tim know that it was critical to the town of Wasaga Beach that, at least one day a week they operate out of the town of Wasaga Beach, to council's point and Councillor Tim's point as well. It's, it's convenient, face-to-face matters in these calls. And I can see why the perception maybe is they're a little Collingwood-centric. It's very much like the County of Simcoe with affordable housing. The province said they're a service provider, so they've been mandated by the province to provide this service. That's why it's out of Collingwood. But over the last 4 years, Collingwood's had 1,857 consultations, the town of Wasaga Beach 495. So you can see that, Collingwood, to your point, is taking advantage of that. And so we want to understand how our residents or our businesses can, take that advantage as well. So part of our strategy is to bring them closer to town once a week, so it's more convenient for our businesses. And I can share that conversation with the economic development manager yesterday. Caitlin as well is a fan of the SPEC, so now we just got to see what value they bring based on their businesses and how we can tweak that to better the business environment, and then report back to council for your guidance.
Thank you, Councillor, or Deputy CAO. I think also too, what I would love to see in that report, excuse me, is also between yourself and the coordinator, alternative options with those funds, right? Like we are in such a tight economic climate right now, and so we definitely want to ensure that we're maximizing efficiency out of every single dollar that we spend, and especially with business support. What would $17,500 do for the Economic Development Department, and how could they utilize or fill those gaps and maybe be even less costly, if you wanted to comment to that? Thank you.
Certainly, we'll certainly pursue that as well. So we've visited the City of Barrie that has a knowledge-based center downtown. We visited the Foundry in Collingwood, which is a shared business environment, and we listened into DMZ out of Innisfil as well to understand what other municipalities are doing and what the options are for council. And so when we report back, we'll certainly add those other opportunities for council consideration.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor Yuko.
Thank you, and through you. Just a question, it may have come out in there, but I didn't hear it then. I'm familiar with the centre. I did make use of them some years ago and found them great. I found out about them just through a mail-out. They did a mail-out. Have they done such a thing into Wasaga Beach directly? It was just a...
I'm uncertain, Councillor Hugo, so we'll have to find out. I'm not sure, how they communicate and how that all works out. So how this came to my attention and why I got engaged was I saw the newspaper article where they were going to seek provincial funding. If they didn't get increased funding, they'd have to cut services. Of course, that got my attention from a Wasaga Beach perspective. So what does that mean for our businesses? And so that's when I engaged with the aspect to start tugging some threads and trying to get some answers for council. So I'm still investigating everything that's going on and how they operate, and they've invited Caitlin and I for a tour of the facility, so we'll get a better sense and a better conversation going as we move forward.
Thank you very much. Any other further questions before we move on? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much, Jerry. We'll move on to number 4.
Sorry, did we want to pass a motion just to receive the correspondence?
I don't
or are
have
you
a motion.
seeking council direction? Staff report, sorry.
I think in my understanding from the report was that they would be coming back to council with information, but maybe I misunderstood that. Go ahead, Councillor Timms.
Yes, through you, Deputy Mayor. So I think right now the Town of Collingwood was looking for support of their letter and financial increase from the province of Ontario, I think is what the intent of that letter was.
Thank you. So I would suggest then, would we want to have any discussion or a vote in regards to whether or not we support with a letter? But I do agree with the town clerk that we are also hearing direction from council to staff. Go ahead, clerk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff direction can be provided to bring back that report on the business and funding relationship with the Small Business Enterprise Center, if that's council's desire. And if so, I prepared a motion to that effect.
Would we take a vote on that, or just as a general agreement, or? Go ahead, Councillor Blanchet.
Just for clarification, judging from the comments, I'm thinking we would want to refer this back to staff for a further report before we make a decision on the funding.
We can hear further discussion, and then the proposed motion based on the discussion is that the Deputy CAO be directed to bring back a report on the town's business and funding relationship with the Small Business Enterprise Center.
Go ahead, Councillor Timms.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We did get off a little bit on the ask of Collingwood with our own concerns about service from SBEC. I think Collingwood is asking us to support them in their ask to the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade to increase the provincial funding that comes from or that goes to SBEC. So if that was increased, there would be less pressure on the municipalities to support it. With such a large increase that's being asked, and perhaps not this year, but moving forward.
Go ahead, Your Worship.
Thank you. As I read the report, I think Councillor Timms is correct. What they're looking for is for the town of Wasaga Beach to support with a motion for their ask from the province for more funding, not specifically from us at this point. The other end of that, of course, is that we're now going to be asking, or are asking, as I understand it, for a report back from staff on our funding and how we'll help them. But specifically to this report, we're voting on whether or not we will support them asking the province for more funding. I think I understood that pretty correctly, but I'm going to look to the clerk, if I may, Madam Chair, for confirmation, because we seem to be off track here.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe we can do two motions, one to support the request to the province and direct staff to bring back a report on the business relationship, if that's council's desire.
Supplementary, if I may, Madam
Go ahead,
Chair.
Your Worship.
Can we not do that all in one motion?
Yes, we can move and second it, and it'll be two pieces.
Thank you.
Okay, so did you want to read the motion, Madam Clerk?
Sure. That the Town of Wasaga Beach Council support the Small Business Enterprise Center request to the province for more funding, and a letter of support be sent, and that the Deputy CAO be directed to bring back a report on the town's business and funding relationship with the Small Business Enterprise Center.
Excellent, thank you very much. We've all heard the motion. Who would like to move it? Councillor Timms and second it. Councillor DeLeo, all those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to number 4, November 7th, Town of Parry Sound, regarding the amendment of the Legislation Act 2006. That was Councillor Timms, please, for a comment or question. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Town of Parry Sound is asking for our support in reaching out to the province regarding the Legislation Act that requires that municipalities publish notices in publications that print weekly or more frequently, and that is no longer possible in our community. There was some discussion around this act and whether or not it affects us, and maybe staff could address that. But I would like the council to support the recent resolution of the Town of Parry Sound to ask the province to make an amendment to the act to include online publications to comply.
Okay, thank you. Is any of the staff want to take that? Go ahead. Andrew?
I'll start. Thank you. And the clerk can correct me if I get this wrong, but I thought that amendment was already done. We have the ability to go online now. So can you just clarify there were some recent changes?
Through you, Madam Chair. So I'd have to look into the provincial legislation, I'll be honest, and see if there's been anything before Parliament. However, our notice policy, the town's notice policy, where it's not legislatively required, our notice policy states that newspaper is both print and online. So the town has positioned ourselves well that we can use both forums to ensure that notice is provided to the public. With regard to the legislation, I can't state where that is.
Go ahead for follow-up, Councillor Timms.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to the clerk. Wouldn't the provincial act be the mother document?
Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. They are, and where legislation guides, however, obviously the province and other municipalities are recognizing that that's posing more difficult. So I do feel there is leniency in how municipalities are providing notice under those provincial acts. However, we will follow up, and if a letter of support is decided to be sent, and we'll ensure the notice policy is also brought before council with any amendments that are required.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That makes great sense. Does that satisfy? Councillor Timms?
I would move that, if I can find a seconder.
Okay, so that motion then, if you wanted to read the motion, or do you need to read the motion after what you just shared there, Madam Clerk?
I believe the motion just to send a letter of support to the province to look at any amendments to the Legislation Act.
Okay, and that is moved by Councillor Timms and seconded by Mayor Smith. Oh, sorry, you had a question?
Sorry, I wasn't seconding, I have a question.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Thank you. So I think before we send a letter of support, although I do support it, that we need to clarify whether or not the act is what we're hearing or thinking it is. It's my understanding, or my belief, I should say, that the province would not enact any legislation that was impossible for communities to comply with, and the fact that we no longer have a weekly newspaper is new to Wasaga Beach, but it certainly isn't new to many of the other 444 municipalities within the province. So I'm struggling to believe that the legislation says you have to advertise in a weekly newspaper. They can't ask you to do that if you don't have it, and many communities don't. So I'd like to get more clarification back on that, and if that's the case, then I would be happy to support that, but I think maybe we're misunderstanding this somehow, some way. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Your Worship. It sounds then that perhaps it's sort of in reverse, rather than sending the letter of support right away, that instead Madam Clerk has time to look into legislation to confirm whether or not the act is still accurate, or if, as the CAO has mentioned, there's been some updates, bring forward back a report to staff and then or to council, and then at that point decide whether or not to send a letter of recommendation. Okay. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
That the clerk be directed to bring back a report on the notice requirements through the Legislation Act and bring back an amended notice policy.
Excellent. Okay, so we have Councillor Timms to move that motion and seconded by Councillor Eco. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 9.4.5. This is in regards to the acquisition of the library property at 120 Glenwood Drive, and this was pulled by Councillor Timms. Go ahead, Councillor Timms.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make a comment because the acquisition of the library property is really quite an exciting and momentous event in the history of Wasaga Beach, and that can easily get lost in a written report. While the library is funded through the public tax base, the Library Board is legislated not by the Ontario Municipal Act, but by the Public Libraries Act. Council has appointed a library board whose sole role is governance with the purpose of ensuring the community receives service that reflects the unique needs of Wasaga Beach. I would like to point out that our library board members are at almost every single meeting, if not every single meeting, and we have the board chair, Lorraine Grzak, here, along with Patricia Copeland, former councillor in the city of Barrie. So, welcome. We've been blessed with an extremely talented and dedicated board, and it is my pleasure to be the council representative at that table. Along with the board's commitment to literacy, our library offers so much more than books. I have observed the current board's appreciation of the initiative to build the new facility and gratitude to the town's support and partnership that has lasted over 25 years in the building at 120 Glenwood. If it were not for the excitement around the increased capacity of the new space, I think many library users and certainly staff members would hate to see the building change hands. The new library space will be a vibrant space offering so much more than books, while our residents will access technology, recreation, research, culture events, lifelong learning, or just a safe place to be. All of this will continue to be free to our residents. I'm speaking on behalf of the library board today when I tell council that they are looking forward to continuing the positive partnership with council and the town in bringing the vision of the twin pad arena and library to life. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Timms. Any other comments or questions to that point? Okay, great. Thank you for your words of support on behalf of the board. I'll read the recommendation motion that the report titled to the Joint Committee of the Whole and Council meeting of November 30th, 2023 be received, and that Joint Committee of the Whole and Council approve the Library Board to dispose of the library property located at 120 Glenwood Drive in accordance with S19 1D of the Public Libraries Act, that the town acquisition of the library property located 120 Glenwood Drive be approved for a nominal consideration, and that the building at 120 Glenwood be used as a secondary town hall location with the potential for community use, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute all documentation required to take effect the transfer of the land between the library board and the town. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Mayor Smith, seconded by Councillor DeLeo. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to 9.4.7. This is in regards to the Beachfront Hotel. It was pulled by myself, and I'd like to first pass the floor, please, to our CAO, Andrew McNeil, for an update.
Yeah, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. This is an exciting opportunity for the town. This is something that the municipality has been trying to attract for many, many years now. In fact, in the 2017 master plan that was approved for the downtown, which includes the beachfront, having a new hotel built on the beachfront was one of the key priorities to revitalization of the beachfront. I wanted to update council that recently we have had discussions with the town, Fram Building Group, and Sunray Group about the potential to bring a hotel as part of the redevelopment plan. Sunray Group, if you're not familiar with them, they are actually actively undertaking a redevelopment in our municipality at the West End. And they have rapidly emerged as one of the largest hotel players in the country. When I authored the report, I took some of the background information from their website, and they very quickly called me and said, you got some details wrong. And I said, well, what did I get wrong? And they said, we don't have 53 hotels, we have 70. And I said, oh, okay, that's kind of a big deal. So to my knowledge, they are one of the largest hotel owner-operators in Canada. So we're very pleased to have them as part of discussions with Fram and the municipality. Discussions have gone quite well, and essentially what we are looking to do is invite them to the table to participate in the development of the master plan for the beachfront that Fram is developing right now. It's very important if you want to build a hotel that that be part of the master plan. So we want to work with them, identify a suitable location for the hotel. Initial discussions were in the vicinity of Festival Square is the area that they seem to be interested on. We're probably in the neighborhood of about 120 rooms that they're thinking about, and they have relationships with all of the big brands across the country. So exciting opportunity. So we'd like direction from council to have them part of the master planning process. And then once a hotel site is determined, we'd like direction to be able to work with them to develop a letter of intent, which would spell out the terms and conditions to have the hotel become real, and then we would report back to council on what those details would look like. Happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Andrew. It's very exciting indeed. Comments or questions? Go ahead, Mayor Smith.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just want to This is a great opportunity, I think, for us to move forward and to bring one of our first, hopefully, major name brand hotels here. And I think being one of the largest hoteliers in the country, there certainly appear to be at this point the right group to be speaking with. So good job on with Andrew and the rest of staff and Caitlin in attending these different functions that the province puts on in order to help with economic development and being able to catch one of the big fish, if you will, and reel them into Wasaga Beach so we could have these positive discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. Any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Rico.
Thank you. Through the chair, yes, I'll make a comment. I don't think I go anywhere in this town on any day when somebody says we're going to do this, but we need a hotel. That's all you hear from everyone, but we don't have a hotel for people to stay in. So thank you for all your work, staff.
Thank you, Councillor Rico. If there's no further comments or questions, okay, I'll read the motion that the report titled Beachfront Hotel to the Joint Committee of the Whole and Council meeting of November 30th, 2023 be received, and that the CAO be directed to work with Fram Building Group and Sunray Group to identify a suitable location for a hotel as part of the development master planning work that is currently underway for the beachfront, and that the CAO prepare a letter of intent, LOI, with Sunray Group to identify the terms and conditions to bring a hotel to the beachfront for consideration by council. Can I get that moved and seconded, please? Moved by Councillor Belanger, seconded by Mayor Smith. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much. And that concludes now general government, and I'll pass the floor back to Mayor Smith. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Mayor. We'll now move back into item number 10, rise and move back into council. And we do have a recommendation resolved at the Committee of the Whole session. Rise and move into council session to receive a report on the proceedings of the Committee of the Whole session. Could I have a mover and a seconder on this, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor Snell, seconded by Councillor Eagle. All in favor? That motion carries unanimously. Item number 11, council sessions, consideration of adoptions of Committee of the Whole recommendations. Resolved that the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole session for the meeting of November 30th, 2023 be adopted as a resolution of council. Mover and a seconder on this, please. Councillor DeLeo and Councillor Timms. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Item number 12, consent list. We do have resolved that the council session of the Joint Committee of the Whole and council hereby receive the November 30th, 2023 consent list from 12, and that all recommendations contained therein be adopted, excluding agenda items that have been pulled from the motion and voted on separately. And I understand there's nothing been pulled there, correct, Madam Clerk? All right, so I'll ask for a mover and a seconder on this, please. Deputy Mayor Snell, Councillor Belanger, all in favor? That motion carries unanimously. Item number 12.1 is the special council meeting November 16th, 2023 at 9 a.m. Resolved that the minutes of this...
Your Worship, my apologies for interrupting. We can move to section 13.
Well, let's do that. Thank you, Madam Clerk. If you're going to make it quicker and easier, you can interrupt any time you like. Item number 13 is council requested staff reports. Members of council, I'm sure you've gone through this and seen the reports. Any comments or questions or further requests? Councillor Belanger?
Yes, through the mayor, I just wanted us to be cognizant of the fact that today, again, we added a number of requests for reports. I think we need to start to look at realistic timelines. We have many significant priorities underway. I sometimes am concerned that our expectation or we're overloading. It's easy for us to ask for more reports at every council meeting, but it's quite a different thing to actually do the work and do the report. So I would, just for the public and for council, I would fully expect that there's longer timelines on some of these reports, and some of them are related to spring, so we do have some time over the winter. So I just would request that we really give some timing of all these reports some consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Belanger. Any other questions or comments? All right, if there's no further questions or comments on any of those items, we'll move on. Move item to item number 14, which is notices of motion. Is there anyone who wishes to put forth a notice of motion? Madam put forth a notice of motion with respect to policing in schools. We had a good conversation at County Council on Tuesday, and we had received a request, I believe, to support Angela Tosserantio in their request to have police, community police officers put back into schools. The Simcoe County, both of our boards have removed police officers from the school, as have others. And what we do know is that this is a resource that is required, or is not required, sorry, but is much needed in our schools. We have vulnerable children, I believe, and again, I apologize because I don't have the exact percentage, but it was a high percentage that Trustee Foley of the Simcoe County District School Board had informed myself about quite some time ago of children in a survey they had done who are afraid to go to school. Afraid for their safety, afraid for their vulnerability, yet we do not have officers, resource officers in schools anymore. Now, with respect to CCI, it was good news to hear that the resource officer in Collingwood has actually set up an office basically across from the high school in the church, and is receiving many kids coming in to see them with respect to different issues and items. But in this day and age, with everything that goes on in society, and the amount of vulnerability out there, and what we need to teach our children. We need to teach our children that the police are the good people and that you can go to them, you can speak to them, much the same as any of our first responders and other quality services. By removing them from the school because of a few concerns from some other folks or citizens or organizations, and making a knee-jerk type reaction to that and removing these officers, I think, does our children a major disservice. And I wholeheartedly believe in supporting this. So I'd like to put a notice of motion forward for the next meeting so as that we can have that discussion. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Snell.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to comment on your motion. Is that okay? Are we allowed to? Or do you wait till it comes up?
Thank you, Your Worship. So advance notice of the motion that would be considered at the next meeting has been provided. All discussion and debate on that motion will be at the next meeting.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Snell. Item number 15, closed session. We do have a resolution resolved that pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, the next portion of the November 30th, 2023 Joint Committee of the Whole and Council meeting will move into closed session to consider the following matters. 15.1.1 land sale matter, 15.1.2 a land matter, and 15.1.3 a Joint Committee of the Whole and Council October 26, 2023, and a special council meeting of October 30th, 2023. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this, please? Councillor DeLeo and Councillor Timms, all in favor. That motion carries unanimously, and we will now move into closed session. Ready? Yep.
And we're live, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, and welcome back, everybody. A rise and report, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council entered closed session on November 30th at 2:10 p.m. to discuss the following matters. 15.1.1, land sale matter pursuant to Section 239(2)C of the Municipal Act. 15.1.2, a land matter pursuant to Section 239(2)B and C of the Municipal Act. As a result of these discussions, staff direction was provided in accordance with the Municipal Act. Council also received and approved the closed session minutes from October 26th and October 30th, 2023.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Council, you've heard the motion. You've heard the rise and report. We'll now move on to item number 16, bylaws. And it is resolved that the following bylaws be received and to be deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time, passed and numbered as follows. 2023-112, a bylaw to establish fees and charges to be collected by the Corporation of the Town of Wasaga Beach. 2023-113, a bylaw to amend Schedule A to Bylaw 2005-12, being a bylaw to designate parts of the highways under the jurisdiction of the Corporation of the Town of Wasaga Beach as community safety zones. And 2023-114, a bylaw to regulate the speed of motor vehicles in community safety zones in the Town of Wasaga Beach. And 2023-115, a bylaw to make appointments to advisory committees, local boards, and external boards and committees, and to repeal bylaw number 2023-95. And finally, 2023-116, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Wasaga Beach at its regular meeting held November 30th, 2023. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor DeLeo and Councillor Timms. All in favor? That motion carries, and this meeting is adjourned.